picture this. You're a kid and you're up late playing video games. Maybe you have a TV in your room, or maybe you snuck into the living room. You have the TV on low volume so you don't wake anyone up. Your parents don't know you're awake. It's dark and quiet and you're alone. And then... if there's one thing that's always creeped me out, it's video game anti-piracy screens. There's just something about them that feels wrong. The fact that your game is illegitimate, the fact that the game is aware of this, and the fact that once it realizes it seems to break the fourth wall and become more than just a game. I remember staying up late at night on my iPod Touch watching videos on the top 10 creepiest anti-piracy screens, or articles on the craziest lengths video game devs went to protect their games, and I know I'm not the only one fascinated and horrified by how these screens make us feel in the dead of night. Nowadays, you've only to say the word anti-piracy to make people shudder in fear, and they've essentially become staples in the horror community. From the history of real anti-piracy measures to the rise of the fake anti-piracy screen community to its emergence as a horror trope, let's take a look at some examples, both real and fake, to see why people find these screens so frightening. Before we get into things, I'd just like to give a huge thank you to Hunter Killer for sponsoring this video. Now, if you're anything like me, you're a fan of the strange and mysterious, you like odd things and diving into rabbit holes, and if that's the case, let me introduce you to Hunter Killer. Hunter Killer is a murder mystery subscription box that lets you solve mysteries from the comfort of your couch. With each delivery, you'll sort through piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings, and case files, eliminating suspects and identifying murder weapons in order to catch the killer. It's basically like a murder mystery detective escape room that you can play at home. If you're a fan of true crime, Hunter Killer is the perfect way to spend a night in, and whether it's for a date night, family game night, or you want to solve the case solo, Hunter Killer lets you play your way. And with over 100,000 active subscribers, there's a huge online community of crime solvers that you can theorize and discuss cases and puzzles with. Plus, while the monthly mystery is amazing, Hunter Killer also offer all-in-one experiences on their store. One of my favorite things about Hunter Killer is that part of the proceeds for every box go to the Cold Case Foundation, an organization that's dedicated to helping with real-life cold cases. So while you're having fun solving fictional cases, you'll be helping to contribute to real-life cases as well. Hunter Killer is awesome, it's super fun, really immersive, and I can't recommend it enough, so head over to hunterkiller.com/Izzy and use code Izzy, that's IZZZY, for 10% off your order. Thank you so much to Hunter Killer for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the world of anti-piracy screens. Before we get into the spooky stuff, you may be wondering what exactly anti-piracy is, so let's do a quick history lesson. Back in the 1970s and 80s, when personal computers, consoles, and video games were rising to prominence as the big new thing, people who sought to game the system, no pun intended, emerged alongside them. These people came to be known as pirates, and the practice of illegally copying, downloading, and distributing games was called piracy. Because, you know, pirates plunder the sea, and internet pirates that surf the web and plunder games. You get it, I don't have to explain it. Back in the 70s and 80s, games utilized very simple rudimentary code systems to safeguard against pirates, and that's if they had any anti-piracy measures in place at all. The video game cassette tape was basically phased out because its security against piracy was so poor that it essentially ran game developers out of business. Games were still pretty new back then, so anti-piracy measures were far from the level of sophistication that we see these days. Naturally, game developers were pissed that instead of everyone buying a copy of their game in stores, one guy with basic knowledge of computers would buy a game, copy it a whole bunch of times, and then share it among friends for free, or even sell it for a cheaper price on the grey market, which is like the black market but a lot lamer. The invention of consoles and more secure game cartridges in the mid to late 80s was expected to put a stop to piracy once and for all, but if anything, it only grew, with dedicated underground pirate groups and networks forming. These groups found their way onto message boards and forums in the late 80s to early 90s, and nowadays there are whole websites and communities dedicated to piracy, or wares as they were called back in the 80s. But we're not here to talk about piracy or the devious little swashbucklers that engaged in it, we're here to talk about anti-piracy. There have been many official, coordinated attempts by studios and even law enforcement to stop piracy, but these have all failed miserably since it's all so decentralized. It's not an organized underground group of supervillains working to take down big game companies, it's random everyday people from all across across the globe, including a lot of dweeby kids trying to download Pokemon Heart Gold from romhacks.com and giving their family PC debilitating viruses. So developers had had enough of losing profits and figured if they couldn't take them out from the outside, they'd get them at the source by forcing them to verify that their game copy was legitimate. And thus, anti-piracy as we know it was born. In the early days, anti-piracy was clunky at best. Obviously, all anti-piracy measures are designed to be terrible and annoying, but early efforts often did more to annoy regular, legitimate users than it did to prevent piracy. A lens lock was a small rectangular piece of plastic with transparent prisms which could decipher scrambled text on a computer monitor and would be packaged with legitimate copies of games. Users would be given about 30 seconds to try and decipher the scrambled code on their blurry monitor and type it out, and hilariously this led to an increase in piracy since users got sick of the stressful lens lock trial every time they wanted to play the game and began pirating versions without it. Code wheels were another very novel early form of anti-piracy, with video games presenting a scrambled code on the startup screen which users then had to decode using the paper wheel that came with their game. Again, very annoying and tedious for legitimate players, and it was kind of pointless because people could very easily just photocopy their code wheels and spread them among friends. Eventually, most of these goofy measures were abandoned in favor of simple serial codes, with each legitimate copy being assigned a unique code in the manual or inside of the game case which users would then type in to basically redeem their game. This was my first experience with DRM/anti-piracy as a kid, since all of my Sims 2 expansions would come with these serial codes. And since I sometimes swapped with friends or lost the manuals, I also had my first brush with piracy when I used keygens, essentially serial code generators which could give you a list of workable serial codes with the push of a button. Yeah, you could say I was a bit of a rebel, playing Sims 2 alone on the family PC instead of interacting with other children. Anyway, as you can tell, the history of DRM/anti-piracy is very long and sordid and full of drama, and this war between pirates and developers has been waging for pretty much as long as video games have existed. Clearly, these clumsy and rudimentary anti-piracy measures weren't working, so developers got inventive. They figured that if they couldn't get them from the outside and they couldn't force them to prove their copy was legitimate, they'd implement features into the game to make them unplayable for pirates. Earthbound would spawn impossible numbers of enemies, and if you managed to somehow battle through them all, it would crash your game and delete your save during the final boss battle. Crisis Warhead replaced every gun in the game with a chicken gun, unable to inflict any damage, effectively making the game impossible to beat. Batman Arkham Asylum disabled the cape glider, again making it impossible to beat the game. Michael Jackson The Experience on DS would play vuvuzela noises non-stop. Grand Theft Auto 4 would make your character permanently drunk with a wobbly camera that made it impossible to navigate, and The Sims 4 would slowly pixelate the entire screen, making it impossible to view or play. Game Dev Tycoon has one of, if not the most famous and widely praised anti-piracy measures ever, with your fictional in-game company suddenly losing all profits due to piracy. Very ironic. One of my favorites was the unkillable Scorpion in Serious Sam 3. In unauthorized copies of the game, a super fast, super strong bright red scorpion would spawn and follow the player through the entire game, unable to be outrun or killed. This made the game impossible to beat, though hilariously people began to pirate the game just to see the scorpion in action and even do speedruns with it. Well, at this point you may be asking, well, what's so scary about anti-piracy? All of the examples I've given so far are strange and annoying and probably really confusing if you're the player, but they're a far cry from the creepy, ominous, scary, Something has changed since I was a morbidly curious kid browsing top 10 anti-piracy Watch Mojo videos. I used to search up anti-piracy on Google and find pages upon pages of listicles with the same entries over and over, or on YouTube where I'd be greeted with, okay, well pretty much those exact same listicles but turned into a video by Watch Mojo or something. But searching up anti-piracy on YouTube now, well, hundreds and hundreds of bizarre, ominous and frightening screens warning about the dangers of piracy and urging the players to shut off the console. From Mario to Animal Crossing to Nintendogs to Friday Night Funkin'. So what exactly is happening here? Do people just have better access to game footage now than when I was a kid? Have games gotten scarier? Are these long undiscovered Easter eggs? Well, not exactly, because these are actually all fake. In recent times, something of a community/fandom has cropped up taking the concept of anti-piracy screens and turning them into something horrific. Using clever editing and animation, these artists create fake creepy DRM screens for all kinds of licensed games and often end up tricking people into thinking they're completely real. So let's take a look at this fake anti-piracy community, from how it formed to what inspired it to the many examples found within. So how did anti-piracy go from chicken guns and giant scorpions to red, blood-eye, backwards music, creepypasta, Zelgo nightmares? Well, there are a few legitimate screens out there that have likely inspired a lot of what we're going to look at. 1996's Donkey Kong Country 3 would display this image if it detected that the cartridge was unauthorized, complete with vaguely threatening music and the pants-shitting phrase, "An irregularity has been detected." There's also a similar screen for Donkey Kong Country 2, which Twitter user @KRuleCountry claims they encountered during a thunderstorm as a kid, and yeah, that would traumatize me too. Super Mario All-Stars simply had a black screen with the text, "Warning, it is a serious crime to copy video games according to copyright law." All in caps, mind you. There's also a similar message found in unauthorized copies of Sonic 1. As a more modern example, Kickstarter-only copies of horror phenomenon Baldi's Basics came complete with this nightmarish screen. The game came out in 2018 before the fake anti-piracy screen trend even started, so in that way it was kind of an early pioneer of the genre. And while all of the aforementioned screens can be placed as influences to the current trend, there's one specific image that we can point to that started the whole thing. On October 14th of 2020, a YouTuber called Joey Perleone uploaded a video titled Mario Party DS Anti-Piracy Screen with the simple caption, "The anti-piracy screen found in Mario Party DS." The screen is simple. The text reads, "Piracy is no party. It is a serious crime to pirate video games. Please power off the system and report the stolen software immediately. For more information, please visit Nintendo.com. Below, a rather abrupt image of the Mario Kart looking alarmed behind bars with large flashing, "Power off now." In the background, vaguely distorted, unpleasant music. And this video blew up. It was quickly shared around and spread like wildfire through the internet, with people commenting about how uncanny and frightening it was and how scared they would have been if they had encountered the screen as a kid. From Twitter to Reddit to countless Nintendo forums, the video spread and was even reported on by various news outlets. It's safe to say that this new Nintendo find went viral and introduced many people to how uncanny and off-putting anti-piracy screens could be. But the thing that most people didn't know at this point was that this video was fake. Internet denizens who were skeptical about the legitimacy of the video began to dig into Joey's channel and do some general internet sleuthing, eventually debunking the viral video as nothing but a hoax designed to fool people. But not everyone saw it that way. Instead of seeing it as a prank or a hoax, some people saw it as a work of art and a piece of editing genius. And so, in late 2020, Joey Perleone's Mario Party anti-piracy video became the first in a long line of fake imitation anti-piracy screens designed to creep out, unnerve, and scare the viewer. After the video's release and subsequent popularity, many people began creating similar edits, with the trend becoming something of a viral meme, even getting its own page on Know Your Meme. Many were confused by this. All of a sudden, articles and videos were going viral listing all of their favorite childhood games and the horrific anti-piracy screens they apparently had, and it wasn't clear to them that this was a viral trend. Even now there's a lot of confusion, but as a general rule, pretty much all anti-piracy screens you see online these days are fake, especially if they look overly creepy or ominous. But regardless of their legitimacy, I've become deeply fascinated with the community and the works of art that they create, so let's take a look at some. First up are the purposely scary, hyper-realistic, blood-eyes, creepypasta style ones. These generally emulate the style of works like Godzilla NES and Sonic.exe with glitched, haunted-looking footage and stereotypically scary images and music. YouTuber Cheese has published many videos in the style, releasing anti-piracy screens for Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and more. One of their most popular videos is a fake screen for Super Mario Odyssey, interrupting the loading page with the spooky Mario screamer and the text, "You are a thief! Warning, pirating video games is a serious crime which is punishable by 10 years in prison. Turn off the console now." All of their other screens follow the same formula, though I especially enjoy the Link's Awakening screen because it says, "Just leave already, save data deleted." It's the first anti-piracy screen that just genuinely sounds fed up with my antics, and I have to respect it for that. Another series in the same vein is by YouTuber ZeroVR, centering around the game Mario Kart for Wii. The most popular upload in the series, error code 0 0x3e sits at nearly 1 million views and starts out with over a minute of regular Mario Kart gameplay footage. Before the player's race begins, a box suddenly pops up with the text reading, "The current race will be interrupted. You will return to the title screen." The modified data will be restored to the original data. The screen then glitches before the titular error code pops up, informing us that we can now play as with a group shot of the Mario Kart characters with black eyes. Some more glitching before we get to a character select screen which alerts us to detected piracy, glitches out, and cuts to a race. The level and characters are all completely glitched out with headless T-posing characters, random objects and textures scattered about, a black sky, and of course some giant black-eyed Marios floating in the sky. The game glitches out again before cutting to a black screen with a final piracy warning. Discordant music plays in the background as a dazed Luigi model sits at the bottom of the screen under text that reads, "Warning, a system or game modification has been detected. The game cannot continue playing due to an error. Power off the game system and report the stolen software immediately. Please refer to your game instruction booklet for more information." The other videos follow pretty much the exact same formula, but I'm a big fan of 0xFF, which features the super creepy glitched out Peach model and a black void level. There's even a fake anti-piracy screen for Catastrophe Crow, which in and of itself is a fake game created as part of an ARG. So many levels going on there. These are just samplings of the huge number of over-the-top creepypasta piracy screens though, and they're so popular that compilation videos and YouTuber reacts have become common. As I said, these aren't the most realistic screens out there, but for the most part these types of videos are just meant to be fun scares rather than perfect emulations of real piracy screens. Like with .exe games, they often look down for being cheap or silly or kinda goofy, but honestly I think they're really cool pieces of art that not only show off the creator's skill and talent, but are pretty effective in being creepy. Some screens instead go to the complete opposite side of the scale, being more lighthearted and silly. These are far more realistic since real life developers are far more likely to make something goofy a la the chicken gun of Crisis and the incessant vuvuzelas of MJ than something ominous or scary. Take for example Catzian's Superman 64 anti-piracy screen.
In short time, your fate will be seen.
I love how they all just stand there passive-aggressively judging you. Imagine being shamed by Superman 64 of all games. I don't think I would ever recover. Quantum Surge's Spider-Man 2002 anti-piracy screen is also pretty great. It is illegal to pirate video games according to copyright law. Spider-Man would be disappointed in you if he were here. It's all fun and games until Spider-Man is disappointed. We did it, boys. We ended piracy. But by far the most terrifying screens to me are the ones that find the perfect balance between subtle and creepy. My personal favourite and one that I hold as the gold standard of anti-piracy screens was uploaded by a YouTuber called Micah for the game Nintendogs on the Nintendo DS. In the video, gameplay starts as usual with the player adopting a husky puppy and naming it Zeus. The game continues as normal with the player bathing, walking and playing with the dog before taking it back home for some food. Zeus then begins to make strange noises that healthy dogs definitely shouldn't be making, before a pop-up informs us that Zeus is sick with scurvy. Get it? Because, like, pirates? Anyway, Zeus isn't looking too hot and the game goes black before suddenly letting us know, quote, "Zeus has died. Nintendogs can only survive in legitimate Nintendo DS cartridges." Finally, a shot of Zeus's grave and the text "RIP Zeus." The screen strikes the perfect balance between creepy with the weird sickly noises and the dog actually dying, and realistic with the lack of gore or screamers or creepy red blood eye screens. The screen is almost darkly comedic, and in that way it's actually pretty similar to a lot of real life examples of anti-piracy. Micah made another fake screen for Animal Crossing Wild World where the player is riding with Cap'n. After some banter, the player is asked to input their name before a broadcast comes on the radio. The player is then booted out of the car with a black screen and the sound of rain and a closing car door. The black screen then reads, Piracy and counterfeiting of Nintendo's video game products is illegal. Press and hold the power button to turn the system off. Again, it masterfully uses the writing style and light tone of Animal Crossing combined with the ominous error message and the faint sound effects of police sirens in the background to make something that would have traumatized me as a kid. One of the more famous examples was created by a channel called Super Mario 64 Better Archive and was simply titled Anti-Piracy Screen.
It's me, Mario!
Simple and effective, and genuinely looks like it could be a legitimate screen. I've personally found that the more understated and subtle the screen is, the more scary. I believe this one was published fairly early on in the fad, and the channel name combined with the kind of description and the title made people think this was actually legitimate. There doesn't need to be distorted music or glitch levels or creepypasta Mario, sometimes all it needs to be is a simple error screen and that's scary enough. But why is it exactly that people find anti-piracy screens so terrifying? Realistically, they're just error screens in video games and you don't see people cowering in the corner after they get booted from Minecraft. Well, let's try to figure it out.
I'm sorry, Spyro, but you seem to be playing a hacked version of this game. This may be an illegal copy. Since this copy has been modified, you may experience problems that would not occur on a legal copy.
That clip is from Spyro 3, and Zoe's message triggers when the game recognizes that it may be hacked, copied, or otherwise illegitimate. The history of Spyro 3's anti-piracy measures is actually really interesting, and the channel Tech Rules even has a video out on it, which I highly recommend, by the way. But it's this clip, this one clip of Zoe breaking out of character to tell Spyro that the game he's playing is hacked or even illegal, that gives me chills. And there are a few reasons why this and many other screens are so effective in creeping so many people out. Firstly, it's just sudden and jarring. Let's go back to that hypothetical from the start of the video for a second. You're up playing video games late at night while your parents are asleep, or maybe you're home alone. You're all comfy and cozy playing your favorite video game when suddenly it's all abruptly cut short by an error screen. Suddenly you feel vulnerable, the game has ceased being a nostalgic and comforting presence and become hostile, refusing to play and even accusing you of being a criminal. It makes the game seem almost omniscient, like it sees what you're doing and knows your crimes, not to mention the fact that games do occasionally trigger false positives with anti-piracy mechanics, meaning that you might not even be guilty of the crime in the first place. Or at least I'm sure that's what you tell the game stealing police when they show up at your door with a warrant for your death penalty for downloading Garfield card off Pirate Bay. Sorry bub. Punishment fits the crime. And on that note, secondly, it's kind of terrifying to be called out as a criminal in your own home by Sonic the Hedgehog or Mario. The phrase "it is a serious crime to copy video games" popping up on your screen in the dead of night is horrible enough to strike terror into the heart of any person, let alone kids who might be playing it. If my game suddenly stopped to claim I was a criminal and could be facing serious consequences for my crimes as a kid, I would probably break down and assume the cops were already on their way. Thirdly, it's an unexpected fourth wall break. Breaking the fourth wall is a term used to describe when movies, TV shows, plays, and video games directly acknowledge and interact with the audience. In games, these can be simple things like telling the player to press X to jump, or they can be self-referential and comedic like video game characters making jokes about video game development or even how well you're playing. They can be creepy like Psycho Mantis reading your game files or Doki Doki Literature Club using your real name. Anti-piracy screens are fourth wall breaks taken to the extreme. It's the developers and game studios reaching out to the player in its rawest form. Fourth wall breaks feel so uncomfortable and uncanny because we like our video games to stay in the realm of video games, but when they start directly addressing us, the player, in uncharacteristic and personal ways, it's surprising. It feels like the game has come to life, and while sometimes that can be magical or funny, in this case it just feels like the equivalent of this meme. Regardless of whether you find this trend spooky or not, you can't deny that it spawned hundreds of really cool, inventive, and creative pieces of art. This is one of the coolest modern horror communities I've seen pop up on the internet recently, joining the likes of PS1 and analog horror. It's really awesome to see people take simple but eerie concepts like PlayStation 1 games or old broadcasts or anti-piracy screens and turn them into these wonderful wonderful handcrafted pieces of art, all inspiring each other and contributing to the community. While the trend has died out a fair amount since it first began in 2020, I hope that we continue to see anti-piracy screens as horror in the future. In my opinion, we're going through an internet horror golden age at the moment, and this community is just one of many that makes the genre so special. If you have any experiences with making these screens or stumbling upon them on the internet, or even better, encountering a legitimate anti-piracy screen in the wild, I'm very interested in hearing about it. Like I said, been obsessed with this stuff since I was a kid, so I'm interested to hear all the stories, and so definitely share them. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to share this topic. It's something I've been obsessed with for a long time. It's all kind of come full circle because I used to love it so much and spend all my time reading about it, and now there's this new horror community popping up around it that's even cooler, and it sort of combines all the things I love, so it's really cool to see that all kind of happening, and I'm very excited that I was able to share it with you guys today. If you ever have any suggestions for future videos, definitely let me know. Thank you so much to Hunter Killer for sponsoring this video, definitely check them out, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope the year 2022 is off to a great start, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! Thank you so much to my Garfield Overlords over on Patreon. Agarafin, and Ginkgo Fox, Arcantilus, Astrian Vortex, Boysenberry Switchblade, Charlie B, Chicory, Dana Homegartner, Doug, Durzo Blint, Finley, Grip Gunderson, Helm Hamburger Hand, Jesse Chisholm, Joe Bradshaw, John Leach, Jordan Nielsen, Kimono My Gyro, Pom, Red Meth, Samsung Account, Sheriff Whiskey, SHSL Sunsun, Simon, Sophie Skidder, The Fabulibrarian, Trevor Zonde, Tyson, and Xavier Araujo. Thank you guys so much for supporting me as always. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description, and yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!